1914. At the time when the Czech lands and Slovakia were an integral part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, and when there existed neither the historical nor the political, psychological, nor social conditions that would have enabled the Czechs and Slovaks to seek their identity outside the framework of this empire, Thomas Garrigue Masaryk established a Czechoslovak national program based on the notion of small-scale work, drobná prac. By that he meant honest and responsible work in widely different areas of life but within the existing social order, work that would stimulate national creativity and national self-confidence. Naturally he placed particular emphasis on intelligent and enlightened upbringing and education, and on the moral and humanitarian aspects of life. Masaryk believed that the only possible starting point for a more dignified national destiny was humanity itself. Humanity's first task was to create the conditions for a more human life, and in Masaryk's view, the task of transforming the stature of the nation began with the transformation of human beings. This notion of working for the good of the nation took root in Czechoslovak society, and in many ways it was successful and is still alive today. Along with those who exploit the notion as a sophisticated excuse for collaborating with the regime, there are still many, even today, who genuinely uphold the ideal and, in some areas at least, can point to indisputable achievements. It is hard to say how much worse things would be if there were not many hard-working people who simply refuse to give up and try constantly to do the best they can, paying an unavoidable minimum to living within a lie so that they might give their utmost to the authentic needs of society. These people assume, correctly, that every piece of good work is an indirect criticism of bad politics, and that there are situations where it is worthwhile going this route, even though it means surrendering one's natural right to make direct criticisms. Today, however, there are very clear limitations to this attitude, even compared to the situation in the 1960s. More and more frequently, those who attempt to practice the principle of small-scale work come up against the post-totalitarian system and find themselves facing a dilemma. Either one retreats from that position, dilutes the honesty, responsibility, and consistency on which it is based, and simply adapts to circumstances. The approach taken by the majority, or one continues on the way begun and inevitably comes into conflict with the regime. The approach taken by a minority. If the notion of small-scale work was never intended as an imperative to survive in the existing social and political structure at any cost, in which case individuals who allowed themselves to be excluded from that structure would necessarily appear to have given up working for the nation, then today it is even less significant. There is no general model of behavior, that is, no neat, universally valid way of determining the point at which small-scale work ceases to be for the good of the nation and becomes detrimental to the nation. It is more than clear, however, that the danger of such a reversal is becoming more and more acute, and that small-scale work, with increasing frequency, is coming up against that limit beyond which avoiding conflict means compromising its very essence. In 1974, when I was employed in a brewery, my immediate superior was a certain S., a person well versed in the art of making beer. He was proud of his profession and he wanted our brewery to brew good beer. He spent almost all his time at work, continually thinking up improvements, and he frequently made the rest of us feel uncomfortable because he assumed that we loved brewing as much as he did. In the midst of the slovenly indifference to work that socialism encourages, a more constructive worker would be difficult to imagine. The brewery itself was managed by people who understood their work less and were less fond of it, but who were politically more influential. They were bringing the brewery to ruin, and not only did they fail to react to any of S.'s suggestions, but they actually became increasingly hostile toward him and tried in every way to thwart his efforts to do a good job. Eventually the situation became so bad that S. felt compelled to write a lengthy letter to the manager's superior, in which he attempted to analyze the brewery's difficulties. He explained why it was the worst in the district and pointed to those responsible. His voice might have been heard. The manager, who was politically powerful but otherwise ignorant of beer, a man who loathed workers and was given to intrigue, might have been replaced and conditions in the brewery might have been improved on the basis of S.'s suggestions. Had this happened, it would have been a perfect example of small-scale work in action. Unfortunately, The precise opposite occurred. The manager of the brewery, who was a member of the Communist Party's district committee, had friends in higher places, and he saw to it that the situation was resolved in his favor. S.'s analysis was described as a defamatory document, and S. himself was labeled a political saboteur. He was thrown out of the brewery and shifted to another one where he was given a job requiring no skill. Here the notion of small-scale work had come up against the wall of the post-totalitarian system. By speaking the truth, S. had stepped out of line, broken the rules, cast himself out, and he ended up as a sub-citizen, stigmatized as an enemy. He could now say anything he wanted, but he could never, as a matter of principle, expect to be heard. He had become the dissident of the Eastern Bohemian Brewery. I think this is a model case which, from another point of view, illustrates what I have already said in the preceding section. You do not become a dissident just because you decide one day to take up this most unusual career. You are thrown into it by your personal sense of responsibility, combined with a complex set of external circumstances. You are cast out of the existing structures and placed in a position of conflict with them. It begins as an attempt to do your work well, and ends with being branded an enemy of society. This is why our situation is not comparable to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, when the Czech nation, in the worst period of Bach's absolutism, had only one real dissident, Karel Havlíček, who was imprisoned in Brixen. Today, if we are not to be snobbish about it, we must admit that dissidents can be found on every street corner. To rebuke dissidents for having abandoned small-scale work is simply absurd. Dissent is not an alternative to Masaryk's notion, it is frequently its one possible outcome. I say frequently in order to emphasize that this is not always the case. I am far from believing that the only decent and responsible people are those who find themselves at odds with the existing social and political structures. After all, the brewmasteress might have won his battle. To condemn those who have kept their positions simply because they have kept them, in other words, for not being dissidents, would be just as absurd as to hold them up as an example to the dissidents. In any case, it contradicts the whole dissident attitude seen as an attempt to live within the truth if one judges human behavior not according to what it is and whether it is good or not, but according to the personal circumstances such an attempt has brought one to.